Senator John Hoffman.
Thank you. Last night I debated with my wife and daughter about how I would talk about Melissa Hortman. And she used the Effenheimer word many times. And so there was this debate in our house about I should just say LFG, LFG. Dude, you just gave me permission to say that. So good morning. It's an honor to be here with all of you today in Minneapolis. I am Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman. And you know what? Welcome to the North Star State, folks. You know, I'd like to say a few words about where we find ourselves, not only here in Minnesota, but across the country, as we work to reclaim what it means to be not only Democrats, but public officials who engage in public life at this critical juncture in America. I want to start off by thanking DNC Chair Ken Martin. You know, Ken, you've been instrumental in the successes we've had in Minnesota for 2 decades. 2 decades. And thank you for all that and for bringing this meeting back to your home state of Minneapolis, home state of Minnesota. We want to thank Governor Walz. Unbelievable. When he gets up here and he does his thing, I love that, right? And Senator Klobuchar, I'll still go down to Iowa for you anytime you want. Keith, you know what? Having our Attorney General that cares about human rights and civil rights is an amazing thing to have. And that gets to this, the challenge we do face. I want to speak about something that we all feel, is that creeping erosion of the public trust. That's not just in institutions, but that's in each other. And in this climate, we must recommit ourselves to governance over grievance, to service over self, and to action over anger. Terror in the night is not legislative reform. It's heinous. It's absolutely heinous. And so as we keep going through that piece of it, this is about courage. And this courage is to meet the fear with clarity. And the courage to put aside performance politics and focus on real solutions. It's about truth, not spin, not grievance, not the easy applause lines, but the honest work of governing. And it's about solidarity, recognizing that our work is bigger than any of us. When we govern with humility and humanity, we restore trust in our institutions and in each other. There's a personal story and a wake-up call. But what I just said is really how we preserve democracy, and this is how we lead. So what happened here in Minnesota in the early morning darkness of June 14th with the political assassinations of Melissa and Mark, and what happened to myself, my wife Yvette, and my daughter Hope was pure evil. It was a political attack on public servants and public service. And it was aimed squarely and slowly at our party. And it was a wake-up call. What is happening at a national level, the persistent dehumanizing narratives and conspiracy theories in public discourse are fueling the radicalization of individuals willing to engage in political violence against perceived opponents. Not okay. I'm still slowly recovering from my gunshot wounds, 9 of them. If you want to see the pattern on my body, it's the same pattern that's in my red door that I no longer have. Although I do still have a long way to go. And what my daughter has endured on top of all this trauma, with publications international objectifying her based on disability, with narratives of the night that aren't even true, that's ableist and that's shameful. And I wish the media would stop leading the headlines with that. Thank you. Thank you. But the last 2 painful months have given me perspective and the determination that the evil and violence on June 14th cannot and will not win. Our nation did cross a threshold on that night, and this horrific experience, what I've heard in a resounding voice from people all across our country and across the political spectrum, is this. It isn't about politics anymore. It must be about right and wrong, right? We've all witnessed when leaders use the immense power entrusted to them, not for the common good, but to settle personal scores, to protect themselves and push selfish policies and pit neighbor against neighbor. That's wrong, and we must call it out. Returning to the core values. I want to talk about 3 core values. I was going to try to hold this hand up, but it's hard to do when I got a rod in my finger. 3 core values, right? I'm not a political strategist, and neither do I have any of the answers. But there are some democratic values that we need to return to reclaim as a party, to get our country back on course. And it won't happen overnight, but we must start and continue on that journey today. That's why meetings like this are so important. First, we need courage, right? Amen. Second, we need truth, right? Third, we need to engage with Americans. What I'm saying about that is we really need to listen to them. And then we need to act on their behalf. I heard from many people across this country since June 14th. And Americans across the political spectrum are thirsting for those things once again. I'm going to give you some examples of that leadership. First, courage. In 1948, a courageous young Minneapolis mayor named Hubert H. Humphrey stirred the Democratic National Convention and the nation when he challenged our own party to step away from states' rights. Remember that was being used for? Segregation of the South. Humphrey said, the time has arrived in America for the Democratic Party to get out of the shadow of states' rights and to walk forthrightly into the bright sunshine of human rights. How about that? Let's reclaim that courage. Let's continue to emphatically point out that when today's politics are warped into selfish agendas that harm families, strip communities of opportunity, and ignore the Constitution that it's meant to protect us. The second one is truth. Another Minnesotan, Walter Mondale, went from the U.S. Senate to become Vice President of the United States. When he left that role, he reflected on his service, and he said, we told the truth, we obeyed the law, and we kept the peace. Imagine that. That's the kind of leadership Americans are hungry for again. And instead, we too often see leaders bending the truth for personal gain and inviting crisis or spreading falsehoods that divide. That path only leads to mistrust and instability. We got to continue to tell the truth to the American people about those selfish policies written to benefit the powerful few. And in this country, right, and in Minnesota and every state, we feel the weight of those choices that enrich the wealthiest by hollowing out our health care, our education, and our future of working families. Not okay. So here's what we need to do. The third thing is solidarity. Paul Wellstone, my friend, his son and I have still to this day, we're the same age, go figure that one, used every waking breath he had to energetically fight for all people. And he used to challenge the unchecked power wielding by the wealthy and large corporations. He galvanized Minnesotans with the motto, Ken, we all do better when we all do better. We use that all the time. People believed him. Right? More importantly, they believed he was on their side. That's huge, right? I continue to hear that from Americans that they don't believe we're on their side anymore. And we need to be, right? We need to organize as Wellstone did and keep fighting so that we all do better. And we need to make sure people know we're with them. Not with the selfish interests that hoard resources, not with politicians who weaponize power, but with the people who keep this country moving forward every single day. All right, I want to close by saying this. What happened in the dark of night on June 14th to the Hortmans and to me and my family is that wake-up call to Democrats all over. We must call Americans to action in ways that don't incite intimidation and political violence, right? Having our own homes violated by pure evil cannot be the new normal. Right? Amen? I believe all Americans and Minnesotans want to talk to each other again without being demeaned and without the threat of violence. And here's how simple it is. Recently, a garage door repairman came to fix our door. And he realized who my wife is and what she's been through. He burst into tears and he asked Yvette, can I give you a hug? And she said yes. That guy, somebody from all paths of life and all political beliefs, that paused to rethink what we have become. They're telling us enough is enough. This doesn't mean we're always going to agree, but it does mean we will have to begin to see the humanity in each other. As Humphrey, Mondale, and Wellstone, and every person in this room does, right? We as Democrats, as Americans, as people with humanity, have to reclaim that. Will you help us reclaim that, people? The tragic loss. The tragic loss of my colleague, my friend, and my political kid's sister, Melissa Hortman, has left an empty space in all of us. She was the most consequential speaker in Minnesota history. Now, she's gone. It's our job to fill that space by upholding her legacy and the values she and her husband Mark held dear. Values we hold dear. So thank you. Thank you for being here today and for allowing me to speak to you today. I hope that the decisions that we all make will help move our party and our country forward and into a better future for everyone. And as Melissa would say, let's fucking go.